The subway screeched into the underground station, its metallic groan blending with the chaos of footsteps and voices. Maya slipped inside, clutching her faded canvas backpack tight against her chest. Her body ached from the endless hours she had just endured, 7 hours cleaning offices downtown, followed by another 5 serving coffee in a bustling diner. And still, she wasn't done. At home, her son was waiting, homework scattered across their small kitchen table, hoping his mother would find enough energy to help him before he fell asleep. She glanced around the packed train. All the seats seemed taken, but just before the doors closed, she spotted one empty spot beside a tall man in a navy blue suit. The air smelled faintly of cologne and paper, so unlike the greasy aroma of the diner that clung to her uniform. She sank into the seat, her knees weak with relief. For a few stops, Maya kept her eyes open, blinking heavily as the train rattled through the tunnels. She told herself she couldn't sleep, not here, not in public. But exhaustion weighed heavier than her willpower. Slowly, her head dipped sideways, brushing against the firm shoulder of the man beside her. The man, Ethan Cole, turned slightly, startled at first. He wasn't used to strangers leaning on him. Usually, people in the city gave him wide space, either out of respect or intimidation. His face often appeared in magazines, paired with headlines about billion-dollar deals, mergers, and luxury. He could have nudged her away, could have shifted uncomfortably or stood up altogether. But he didn't. Instead, he studied her face. Her skin was pale under the harsh fluorescent lights, her lips dry, her eyelashes trembling as if even in sleep she carried worry. The way her arms clutched her backpack spoke of someone guarding the little she had. Ethan's sharp eyes, trained to read boardrooms and contracts, saw something entirely different here. Quiet desperation, exhaustion carved into every feature, but also dignity. Passengers noticed. A couple of teenagers whispered and pointed, pulling out their phones to take pictures. A suited businessman raised his brows, recognizing the famous CEO, his mouth twitching into a knowing smirk. But Ethan ignored them all. For the first time in years, he felt a strange warmth on his shoulder, not just the weight of another person, but the reminder that beneath titles and money, there was still something deeply human in sharing a small moment of comfort. He shifted just slightly, adjusting his posture so her head would rest more securely. To his own surprise, Ethan felt protective, as though in this crowded, indifferent city, he had been entrusted with a fragile responsibility. The train rattled on. Maya breathed softly, unaware of the man she leaned on, unaware of the cameras clicking around them. For her, it was simply a stolen moment of rest in a life where sleep was a rare luxury. For Ethan, it was the beginning of something he didn't yet understand. The train lurched sharply as it pulled into the next station. Maya stirred, her head sliding off the man's shoulder. For a split second, she didn't know where she was. Then her eyes widened, horror washing over her as she realized she had been leaning on a complete stranger. Her cheeks flushed a deep pink. "Oh my God. I'm so sorry," she blurted, clutching her backpack tighter, as if the worn fabric could swallow her embarrassment. "I didn't mean to." The man turned his head toward her, and for the first time, she noticed him clearly. He wasn't just any commuter. His suit was sharp, tailored perfectly to broad shoulders, his tie was silk, his shoes polished so well they caught the dim subway light. His hair was styled in a way that screamed precision, and his wristwatch looked like something worth more than her rent for 6 months. Maya's stomach twisted. Of all the people she could have fallen asleep on, it had to be someone important. Someone who didn't belong in her world at all. But instead of irritation, the man's lips curved into the faintest smile. "No need to apologize," he said, his voice deep and calm. "You looked like you needed the rest." His tone was steady, but there was something softer beneath it, something that made her throat tighten. She opened her mouth, wanting to explain, but what could she say? That she worked 2 jobs just to pay the bills. That she hadn't had more than 3 hours of sleep in days. That her little boy sometimes whispered at night, asking why mommy looked so tired. "I didn't mean to trouble you," she managed, her voice breaking slightly. "It's just, I guess I'm more tired than I thought." He studied her, and for reasons she couldn't understand, his gaze didn't feel judgmental. Instead, it felt curious, almost concerned. The train slowed again. She shifted in her seat, desperately wishing she could disappear. But before she could stand, he spoke again. "Do you take this train every day?" The question startled her. She glanced at him, uncertain. Yes. It's the cheapest way home." Her voice was clipped, defensive. In her experience, people like him didn't ask questions like that unless they wanted to pity you, or mock you. But his expression remained unreadable. He only nodded, as though storing the information somewhere in the back of his mind. "I see," he murmured. The doors opened. Maya leapt up, muttering a rushed goodbye. Her heart hammered in her chest as she slipped into the crowd. She didn't look back, afraid she'd find him still watching. Ethan sat there, unusually still, ignoring the flashing phones and whispers of the other passengers. He wasn't sure why he asked about her train ride, or why her tired apology lingered in his ears. He only knew that the woman who had stumbled into his life for 5 fleeting minutes had left an imprint he couldn't shake. 2 mornings later, Maya tied on her apron in the tiny bakery where she worked part-time. The shop smelled of warm bread and cinnamon rolls, the air thick with the comforting aroma of fresh pastries. She smiled faintly as she glanced at her son, Daniel, who sat at a corner table, hunched over his notebook. His small hand gripped a pencil tightly as he tried to finish his math homework before school. "Mom," he whispered, tugging at her sleeve, "do you think someday we can buy a whole cake? Not just the slices they give us when the manager lets you bring home extras." Maya's heart clenched. She brushed his hair back gently. "One day," she promised. "But right now, you've got to finish that homework." "Deal." Daniel nodded, though his eyes lingered longingly on the glass display of frosted cakes. The bell over the bakery door jingled. Maya turned, ready to welcome the customer, and froze. Ethan Cole, the man from the subway. The man she had embarrassed herself in front of just days ago. Except now, in the bright light of the bakery, his presence felt even sharper. His dark suit contrasted with the cheerful pastel walls, his polished shoes clicking softly against the wooden floor. Her heart jumped into her throat. Why here? Why now? Ethan's eyes scanned the shop before landing on her. Recognition flashed instantly. He smiled faintly, almost amused. "Well," he said, his voice carrying a calm ease, "seems we keep running into each other." Maya's face burned. She fumbled with the cash register, desperate to act normal. "This is unexpected," she muttered. He chuckled. "I was told this bakery makes the best sourdough in the city. I didn't realize I'd find a familiar face here too." Before she could reply, Daniel peeked up from his notebook, curiosity written all over his face. "Mom, who's that?" he asked loudly. Maya's embarrassment deepened. "Daniel, please," she began, but Ethan crouched slightly, lowering himself to the boy's eye level. "I'm Ethan," he said with a small smile. "And you must be Daniel." The boy blinked in surprise. "How do you know my name?" Ethan glanced at Maya, who looked torn between mortification and exhaustion. "Let's just say," he said kindly, "your mom mentioned you once." Daniel grinned, clearly pleased. Children had a way of trusting kindness without hesitation. "Do you like cake?" he asked. Ethan laughed softly, the sound startling even to himself. It had been so long since he laughed like that. "Actually, yes. Which one's your favorite?" Daniel pointed proudly at a simple chocolate cake in the display. "That one. Mom says we'll get a whole one someday." Maya's throat tightened. She wanted to correct him, to hush his innocent honesty, but Ethan only nodded thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. As the bakery manager greeted Ethan and began explaining the products, Maya busied herself wiping the already clean counter, trying to hide the storm of emotions inside her. Why did this man, this stranger, make her feel so seen and so vulnerable at the same time? And why, in his eyes, did she catch a flicker of something she hadn't seen in anyone in years? Respect. For the first time in forever, Ethan pushed aside his strict schedule. He stayed longer than necessary, asking questions not about profit margins or sales projections, but about Maya. How long had she worked here? How did she juggle shifts? What did she want for her future? Maya answered cautiously, but Daniel's innocent interruptions, "Mom wants to study nursing someday," made Ethan's heart ache. This wasn't just a struggling worker. This was a mother fighting with everything she had for her child's future. And Ethan realized, he didn't just admire her. He wanted to help her, though he didn't yet know how. The video surfaced late one evening. A grainy clip taken on the subway. A weary woman asleep on a man's shoulder, and that man, immaculately dressed, sitting still and composed, not brushing her away. It would have been an ordinary scene, except the man was Ethan Cole, the notoriously private CEO of Cole Enterprises. Within hours, the internet exploded. Cole's CEO shows unexpected kindness. Is Ethan Cole softer than we think? Who's the mystery woman? Maya found out the next morning when a coworker shoved her phone into her hands. "Isn't this you?" she whispered, eyes wide. Maya stared at the screen, her stomach dropping. The world had seen her most embarrassing moment, her exhaustion laid bare for millions. Her first instinct was panic. What if people mocked her? What if Daniel saw this? But when she peeked online, the comments shocked her. That poor woman must have been exhausted. Single moms are superheroes. Respect to Ethan for letting her rest. Didn't expect that from him. For the first time, strangers weren't laughing at her. They were defending her. Days later, Ethan stood at a press conference. Cameras flashed, journalists jostled for position. His PR team had begged him to spin the moment into a lighthearted anecdote, but Ethan had other plans. He cleared his throat, his deep voice filling the hall. "Many of you saw the video. Yes, it was me. And yes, she fell asleep on my shoulder. But what the cameras didn't show is the truth behind that moment." The room quieted. Ethan continued, "She is a hard-working mother. She didn't choose to fall asleep. Her life left her no choice. There are thousands like her in this city, parents who sacrifice sleep, comfort, and even their health just to keep food on the table. For their children." That moment reminded me that behind every tired face is a story, and a responsibility for those of us who can do something. He paused, then announced the initiative that would send shockwaves across industries. Cole Enterprises would fund childcare centers, provide scholarships for employees' children, and create a support program for single parents in the workplace. Reporters erupted with questions. Ethan raised a hand, then gestured to the side of the stage. "If you want to know why this matters, ask her." Maya froze where she stood, Daniel's small hand clutching hers. She had never been in a room like this, bright lights, cameras, powerful people staring at her. Her knees trembled, but when Daniel whispered, "It's okay, Mom," she drew a shaky breath and stepped forward. "I never expected any of this," she began, her voice soft but steady. "All I wanted was to do my best for my son. Some days, that means working until I can't keep my eyes open. That day on the train, I thought I'd embarrassed myself. But instead, it became something I could never have imagined." Her eyes welled with tears as she glanced at Ethan. "For the first time, someone powerful didn't look at me like I was invisible. He saw me, and now, because of him, people like me might finally have the chance to breathe again." The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but all Maya cared about was the way Daniel squeezed her hand proudly, his smile brighter than any spotlight. Weeks later, Maya's life began to shift. She received a scholarship to return to school and start her journey toward becoming a nurse. Daniel was placed in a better school, where he thrived. For the first time in years, Maya didn't feel like she was constantly drowning. And Ethan, he continued running his empire, but something in him had changed too. The woman who once leaned on his shoulder without knowing who he was had unknowingly leaned on his heart as well. What began as a simple subway ride became the story that shocked the world, and transformed two lives forever.